Hey everybody, it's Dr. Julie Quinn here, and I'm about to introduce you to Module 5. So we are about halfway through the term now, and if you made it this far, you can complete the term. We're going to get a little more complex, but that's the nature of most classes. And so I went over here, and I, of course, went to Course Menu and to Learning Modules, and I just clicked on Module 5. So let's take a look at its introduction. Remember, we always go over the learning objectives and the overview. So you're going to communicate an analysis of a text. So you're analyzing the text that you chose to that primary audience that you've been talking about in the prior pre-writing assignments from earlier weeks. You're going to support an analysis of this text with evidence. So you're going to practice documentation of borrowing, and you're going to practice borrowing and quoting and in paraphrasing from this text. Okay, how to combine elements of pre-writing. So all that writing work that you've done before, in this class, this term, you're welcome to data mine your other assignments from weeks 1 to 4. If you particularly liked a summary that you created, for example, and you wanted to fold that into the introduction of this analysis document, you could do that. That would not be considered self-plagiarism. It's done this term in this class. All of the writing ahead of time has been designed specifically for you to use it as a platform from which to launch into this paper. Okay, we're talking about a sort of the processes of pre-writing and drafting, and you can use these processes in papers to come, and also doing a specialized communication. So thinking about that particular audience and how do you write to them? What do they need? So for example, if your text was about business and your first audience are employers, you would focus some of that content differently than if your secondary audience you're writing eventually to that audience would be employees. You would present the information in a slightly different manner. Okay, so let's go over the Module 5 content, developing a first draft. Okay, so it says when you start writing a draft, keep in mind that your draft does not need to be perfect. In fact, it rarely ever is, right? The purpose of this draft is to get started and to get everything out of your mind onto the page. Remember, writing is an act of translation. It may make perfect sense in your mind, but we have to unpack the nonlinear thoughts into sentence to sentence and paragraph to paragraph linear structure. And it never, ever really comes out the way that we think it is, because the writing process is artificial, right? And especially when we're talking about writing academically. All right, so what I've got to show you here is a generic sort of setup for an argumentative essay. Your critical analysis is an argumentative essay. Your introduction should start with a warm-up, like some background information on the author, on the text, on the topic. A hook detail, some sort of statistic or a quote from the text that you're analyzing that will stand out and make the readers interested. And then a thesis statement, which is something we're going to work on a little bit later. So say you're analyzing a text by Chen. You can say Chen makes a strong argument, that's your opinion, in her text that Congress should legislate against the death penalty for a series of reasons. Costs outweigh the benefits, discrimination in jury decision making is still rampant, and the risk of executing the innocent. So if you go back to our course readings, you can see that this full draft starts with that introduction. And by the way, I will include my little outline notes so you can kind of see the structure of the essay to come. I'll have that as a document link in the bottom of the announcement. Okay. Your body paragraph presents one point. A paragraph is just a collection of sentences that are unified in some particular way. And when we write those body paragraphs, I want to go back here and I actually want to introduce a new page to this document. So we insert, let's just insert a page break just for a second here. So imagine we're writing body paragraphs. They will have this particular shape. Topic sentences that tell us what the paragraph is about, then the evidence from your article that you're borrowing, whether it's word for word with quote marks and the author's name, or whether it's entirely in your own words, same sentiment but in the author's name. And then you always have like a works cited. This is an MLA example of, so if I mention Cholby in my document, I'll have Cholby in the works cited. No, for this article, you're only going to have one works cited entry. All you need is evidence from the article. It's a textual analysis. In English 190 and beyond, you'll have multiple sources with multiple bits of analysis where you're doing what's called synthesis. But for now, that's how you're going to be documenting. And you'll see here that in the breakdown of these body paragraphs, this section will be about costs. And it's not that it's just one paragraph, Perhaps you find a lot of really interesting costs. In research, in the article, you may find that 400 million was spent by California on the death penalty in the last decade. 400 million. Isn't that interesting? 200,000 a year per inmate on death row in California. So this could be a paragraph on California. Then you could have a paragraph on the federal system and so on and so forth. So even though this topic's a little bit different than the ones that you're writing about, you can see how each body paragraph focuses on a different element of your argument. Say you're analyzing the quality of the writing and you want to teach how managers can understand this text. You may focus on different aspects of the text and have different body paragraphs. Then in a second audience, you go back and talk to the employees and explain how the employees should read the text. The key questions: who is your audience? You've already answered that. What choices would you make regarding word choice and tone? If you're writing to managers, you wouldn't use slang, right? What is your purpose? Is it that for them to see that your author is correct? Is your purpose for them to see that this is a good gateway article and they should start here but then continue to read on the topic? Is it for them to learn from this article and actually change the processes? And I think there are a lot of things to consider. Okay, so you want to answer all of these through some piece of that introduction and body paragraphs. And then you'll eventually have a conclusion, and we can finesse that a little bit later, but the conclusion restates your main points, and you'll see it in that basic argument outline, and provide some like insight or food for thought. What's next for these readers? You know, essay has an introduction, multiple body paragraphs, and a conclusion. Body paragraphs focus on a main point, and if your point is really big, you're welcome to break it into 2 paragraphs. I don't want to see a 2-page paragraph. That could be overwhelming. The conclusion ties your essay together and sort of states why your argument about this is important. Perhaps it's that managers don't get any up-training on some of these newer concepts in the general corporate world, and this is why you think it's important for them to read this article or to start more reading on this topic. Okay, so resources this week. You've got some readings. You've got the chapter 4 on how to write anything. Let's see, it's going to be talking about arranging details. You've got chapter 26. It's study an essay or artifact that's similar to the one that you're writing. Then you've got to read chapter 34, which talks about the visual. Body paragraph needs to be one idea. So I'm going to make a recommendation, for example, that as you write your draft, you randomly read your body paragraphs out of order. Don't rearrange them, but for the moment, read them out of order. Just make sure they're unified, that they've got one thought, that there's a topic sentence, there's data, there's discussion. And to make sure that they're internally unified, then you read it all together in your paper and just make sure that they flow in a consistent order for you. Now, we've got the APA and MLA style guide. All of this just depends on your major, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me and I can help give you guidance. There's also some additional videos because I know a lot of students are visual learners, and I like to include my announcement videos, but there are some built into the assignment as well. Now, your paper that's coming up. When you get here, you've got your guidelines and rubric. Remember, it's so important to use this overview document as a checklist. Don't just riff off of it, like get your ideas off of it, but never come back and make sure that you've included everything. My promise is that I'm going to grade based on these categories, and that's what I'll be looking for. There's a lot of categories here, so you want to use it as a checklist. Once you've drafted, print this table out and go row by row and make sure you are in the proficient column. Okay. For example, when you introduce your analysis, you must name the title and the author and the topic, right? Which text are you actually analyzing for a particular audience? Okay. Identify the topic, explain the writer's choices in relation to the genre, go back and data mine your prior submissions. Describe your writer's purpose, explain the writer's choices. These could be the different body paragraphs. You could talk about choices in audience with examples, choices in purpose with examples, choices in subject. You could have paragraphs about the historical and cultural context. Remember, this document's more than a 5-paragraph essay. These are all of the different practices and exercises, we call them heuristics, that you've done in prior weeks. Go back to them and start to use them to flesh out this paper. So you're going to answer these questions. You can see the APA and MLA template. Stick with one, and then note as well that there are these samples that I will do a quick review of a little bit later in the class. Let's take a look at one of the examples right now as it loads. Okay, so take a look at this sample. Please note, when you submit your paper, you do not need the SNHU logo. I think they just stamped it there to show in the example. So APA has a title, a little bit of a gap, student's name, the college name, the class, my name, and then the date. The date of final submission is perfectly fine, or the date of the draft is fine. You'll notice your introduction paragraph. What you want to do is you can see the name of the title, the name of the author, some background, main points here. You can also see that there's this what's called a thesis statement that we're going to keep working on, where you can say she does not offer as many ways, which means that's a bit of a criticism. That is student A's like a major argument. We're going to see that throughout the body paragraph shape. So far we've got just over 2 pages as an example of this document. And you can go through and you can see focuses on work-life balance, the tools that workers can use, what's best for the workplace and not the worker, and then what we probably need is a conclusion. We want to keep growing this for sure. And then you can see that there's a reference. You'll see samples of this in both MLA and APA style. So take a look at this. Depth of discussion, use of examples, body paragraph shape. And for a draft, this is an okay length. Your final document is going to be longer, especially as you incorporate my feedback. But this is what you'll be working on this week, and I look forward to hearing from you so we can work together before the assignment is due. If you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out.